All right, we'll go ahead and get started as folks continue to come on in. Good evening. Welcome to everyone, and welcome to another Spotlight PA live event. I'm Christopher Baxter, the CEO and president of Spotlight PA, and I'm really glad to see everyone here with us this evening. Rainy here in the Harrisburg area, but hopefully not where you are. And of course, a very important topic, elections, the primary election coming up on April 23rd. For those of you who are new to our programming, Spotlight PA is an independent, nonpartisan, and nonprofit newsroom producing investigative and public service journalism about the state government and urgent statewide issues. You can follow all of our work at spotlightpa.org. Again, that's our website, spotlightpa.org, or by signing up there for one of our several free email newsletters so you don't miss a single story. Our team is here to help you navigate the Pennsylvania election process with everything you need to know, from important voting deadlines, candidate guides, primers on obscure government or electoral processes, even interactive voting tools like our new Your Next AG tool that we debuted this week, helping folks find which AG candidate is most aligned with your values. Our members make all of this work possible, and I see several in attendance here tonight. So first, I want to stop and say a heartfelt and sincere thank you for your support. And if you're not yet a member, I'd like you to take a moment and consider making a gift right now. You can do so by going to spotlightpa.org. Again, that's spotlightpa.org/donate, spotlightpa.org/donate. Your support not only allows this event, future events, and all of our journalism to continue, you also allow us to keep all of that vital information free and available to the public. It only takes a moment, and I hope each of you consider doing so now. We know that a strong democracy relies on a strong and informed electorate, and that's why it's so important through our nonprofit model to ensure our information is available to everyone, not only for those who can afford it or only those who have a subscription. That's why, again, we keep all of our journalism available at no cost, and we can only do that thanks to your support. So once again, if you're not yet a member, we would love to have you join us this evening. You can go and make a gift at spotlightpa.org/donate. Again, it only takes a moment. A few housekeeping items. Today's event will be recorded and posted on our website within the next few days. For those who either could not be here, or if you want to watch again or share with a friend who you think might be interested. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question in advance. I know Stephen will work through and get to as many of those as possible. If you haven't yet asked a question and want to, you can use the Q&A feature right here in Zoom at the bottom of your screen. Just look for that Q&A button, click that, drop a question there, and Stephen will get to as many of those as possible. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to the man of the hour, Stephen Caruso, our government Harrisburg reporter, to take it from here. Stephen?
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everyone. So as Chris said, I'm Stephen Caruso. I am one of Spotlight's Capitol reporters, and I'm here to walk us through the state row house races. Really fun stuff. I'm going to also say something up front is I have done a few of these events. I have been told I talk way too fast. I'm going to work on that. I'm from New York. My apologies in advance. But so just to get us started, thank you for spending your Thursday evening with us as we discuss the primary elections here in Pennsylvania. We have 3 statewide elected row offices: Auditor General, Treasurer, and Attorney General. The election is April 23rd, and that's less than 2 weeks away. But these 3 little-known positions play key roles in our Commonwealth's government. They manage finances, they engage in the criminal justice system, and they hold other public officials accountable. And I think it's also really important to note, with their statewide reach, you're going to see a lot of them. They can show up on your TV. They'll show up in your newspapers. They have a big bully pulpit to show up and be heard all across the state, meaning that they could potentially rise through the ranks of government and elected office. The faces that you see running for these offices this year, getting elected, serving in 2025 and 26, you might see them aiming for something even higher later in the decade. So it's about what they do with this office, but it's also about the ambition they're showing by going for this office. And a reminder too, we're going to be talking about Republican and Democratic candidates for office because Pennsylvania has closed primaries. You only can vote in the primary. That's April 20th. 23rd again if you're a registered Democrat or Republican. I'm also sad to report the deadline to register has passed. I hope everyone here is registered, and you still have a little bit of time to request a mail-in ballot, if I recall correctly. But that's to say, all of this to say that we will take a closer look at third-party candidates, whoever they be, when we get closer to the general election. But at this point, we're only talking about Democrats and Republican candidates because they're the only ones that you'll have an option to vote for on April 23rd. So, with all of that said, I'm going to share my screen real quick. We have a handy, you're going to see my notes real quick. Oh my God. See, this is why I'm not good with, for a young person, I am quite bad at the old tech. And we're going to go to our handy slideshow and we're going to get started. And also just a programming note, we have these 3 offices, as I talked about. I think our plan and our hope is to go through each office, and then we will ask for questions about that office. So if we're going through the treasurer, ask us questions. We'll get to them then. I don't want to make anyone have to wait and try to figure out what they wanted to ask about Malcolm Kenyatta after we've gone through Jack Stolzheimer. So with that said, the state treasurer is where we're starting. The treasurer is kind of what it says on the tin. Their job is managing the state dollars. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they get to decide where a lot of money goes. That's the job of the General Assembly and the governor. But the state has a lot of money. So they have the ability to take money that's sitting around in the bank account and, make sure it's being put to good use and, short-term investments and stuff like that. They also they are the name is on every paycheck that goes out to state workers and on every bill that the state pays. They also sit on the board of Pennsylvania's public sector pensions, which gives them a lot of power to control how billions of dollars go into the private market. We're talking about CSRS and PSRS here. So they're very important in what they do, and it's a position that generally calls for somebody who's interested in finances. For Democrats, they have 2 candidates. First off, we have Ryan Bizzarro. Ryan Bizzarro is from Erie. He worked for the Erie School District and the local DA before he ran for State House in 2012 and won election, and he's been serving in the State House since then. He has risen through those legislative ranks. He's currently the Democratic House Policy Chair, which means he helps basically develop their policy, holds hearing across the state, and then messages that. His district is a very swingy district. Democrats and Republicans at the top of the ticket have done well there. Bizzarro has managed to win, though. He's running for his state house seat as well as state treasurer. He is endorsed by the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, also a number of his colleagues, such as House Speaker Joanne McClinton. He also has the endorsement of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. That's the statewide federation that includes a number of public and private sector unions. And I should say, as a state lawmaker, he has focused a lot on veteran issues, and he's also focused on animal cruelty. He was the top Democratic lead sponsor on a bill that stiffened Pennsylvania's animal cruelty laws in 2016 under former Governor Tom Wolf. That's known as Libra's Law. He said he wants to prioritize trying to use the office to get more unclaimed property back to people. The treasurer's office has this really funny role where it has to basically, if a bank goes under or something happens to it, that property gets handed over to the state treasurer's office, who sits on it. And it still has your name attached, or whoever the depositor, whoever it is, was. But maybe you forgot about it or whatever. And they hold on to it, and that's another small but very consumer focused role of the treasurer's office. And Bizzarro said he wants to prioritize getting that money back out. So that's Ryan Bizzarro. He faces one challenger in the Democratic primary. That is Erin McClelland. She's a Western Pennsylvanian. She has run for local offices there, or I should say just offices there, such as Congress and Allegheny County Executive. She also started and managed her own addiction recovery service, and she has worked for the Allegheny County Department of Human Services. McClelland has said as treasurer, she wants to focus more on the state contracting, which does fall, as I mentioned, to the treasurer in a way, because they're the ones who make sure those checks go out to whoever is working with the state. She wants more accountability measures that she's hoping to work into there. And she's also opposes a plan that previous state treasurers, Democratic and Republican, have backed, known as Keystone Saves, which would basically set up state, not backed, but help create a public-private partnership for local employers that can't afford to set up retirement plans to partner with private money managers to set them up for their employees. A bill actually passed the state house to set this up this session under Democratic control. Ryan Bizzarro did vote for it. It's in the state Senate. It hasn't moved there. It had bipartisan support, but McClellan has opposed it, saying it's basically a giveaway to private money managers. And now these are the two Democratic candidates. They are both vying for a shot to be on a November ballot to go against the incumbent, who is Pennsylvania's current state treasurer, Stacey Garrity. She is from Bradford County, which is in northeastern Pennsylvania. I remember my geography of this great commonwealth. She is a retired Army colonel, and she was nicknamed the Angel of the Desert for her management of a POW camp during the Second Iraq War. She also served as a vice president of a metal company in her area. She is the incumbent. She won in 2020, defeating Democratic Treasurer Joe Torsella, and she has, as a treasurer, made her a priority to, she's worked on unclaimed property. Her office has claimed to be actually returning more total dollars to people than the previous treasurer, Joe Torsella. That's partially because, and I believe she's acknowledged this, if a system Torsella was starting to get set up that she took over. She also, as treasurer, has taken on some of the stances that Torsella did in terms of serving on pension boards, advocating against the pensions, putting a lot of retirees' dollars into private equity or other risky bets, focusing more on stocks and bonds, the sort of investment that you might do through a normal stock trader in your personal life. She is endorsed by the Pennsylvania Republican Party. I assume, she doesn't face a primary challenge. We might see more endorsements that, might say more about who she is as a candidate coming later on in, the process, but we're still in the primary. And one other thing I'd like to just add about the treasurer position is it is fairly important because, they like I said, their job is kind of ministerial. They're signing the checks, they're kind of managing money, but they do have some power to, in a budget fight under when Joe Torsella was treasurer, he actually refused to extend a line of credit to the state to help pay bills. And in that case, because he basically said, I don't want to keep up this fight. Everyone needs to come to the table and come to a deal about how to fund the government. We can't keep going into debt to, pay the bills. So the treasurer kind of has not as much discretion until all of a sudden their discretion is the thing that could decide if what is happening in Harrisburg. So it's an interesting position that has, there's a lot of potential for it to have an impact on things. Okay, so that is the state treasurer, and I want to, let's see here. Let me just check real quick. You'll have to, like I said, I'm not the best with text. You do have to give me a second. I want to check if we got any questions. What is an orthomolecular recovery program from Phyllis? Well, Phyllis, you stumped me. I can't say I know for sure, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have a chance to Google that one before. So that's something I meant to do, but I was trying to look up political positions. So you got me. My apologies. Hopefully we can get an answer for that later, but I've had a chance to look at it later in the Q&A session. So let's see here. I would also just like to last call for questions on state treasurer before we move on to the auditor general race. Does anyone else have any questions on the treasurer's office? We can always circle back. I'm not going to ding anyone. I'll keep. Yes. So we got a question. Treasurer Garrity did invest some of that loose money that I've mentioned that the Treasurer's office has control of into Israeli bonds. So as I mentioned, it's I think the way to think about it isn't so much that like she directly it's tough to say that it's not that it is taxpayer money, but it's not as if, money that could potentially be going to human services is now going to Israeli bonds. Is that there's just, with municipal finance, there's just money sitting around that maybe has to pay a bill in a couple months, so you don't spend it now. But money sitting in a bank account could be making some money elsewhere. So she basically decided to up Pennsylvania's investment by, I believe, 20 million. We already had, I think it was about $30 million in Israel bonds, and she added about 20 million more in. That's a very small fraction of the amount of money that the Treasurer's office had discretion of. But yes, she did in fact do that. Treasurer Ryan Bizzarro said that he was okay with that. He thought it was a good move. Supported the Commonwealth's continued financial relationships with Israel. Treasurer Erin McClelland, when Spotlight PA talked to her, my colleague Clayton Hung-Pu did a great story on this. She basically said, she thought that issue was a bit of a distraction, and that she didn't want to necessarily, make a hard call on like if it was a good investment or not until she looked at it more. I should also say too that Bizzarro has been making a lot of arguments for the general election about why he is electable, focusing on his opposition to Stacey Garrity as Republican. Stacey Garrity has voiced support for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. She has also expressed, she appeared at a rally on January 5th, 2021, with some people who ended up going to storm the Capitol. Bizzarro has spent a lot of time focusing on his attacks on that. And that is, so that's sort of something I think we'll analyze more come the general election, but important things to note there. So, excuse me. We also have investment performance reports. So the state treasury actually does release yearly reports that will show a lot of those numbers. I don't have them right in front of me. I could try to dig up a link and we could get it in the chat. But yes, they release annual reports that show the amount of money. Like I said, it is literally in the billions of dollars that they kind of control. But like it's all kind of, and when I say loose money, I just mean that, it's money that's potentially going to something else or really earmarked for something. The Treasurer's Office, for instance, also controls some special savings accounts that Pennsylvania can create for college savings that are tax-free, for instance. They also, or savings accounts that are set aside that are tax-free for people with disabilities. And so the Treasurer's account sort of has the ability to take the money that's put into there and then decide how it goes, whether it's going to a mutual fund, whether it's going to private equity, whether it's going to Israeli bonds. That's the sort of universe of money they're controlling. I hope that makes sense. And then does McClellan have any endorsements? Not that Spotlight PA has been able to analyze or been able to find, but there is always the potential where in the last 2 weeks some might come down the pike. Not sure otherwise. And I hope okay, cool. I think I went over everything, and I think I broke my trying to talk slower rule, but how about we move on to the Auditor General? So, let's see here. The Auditor General, this is another statewide position, as I mentioned. They're one of the more interesting ones because the job is effectively to be a fiscal watchdog. They conduct financial audits of everything from district courts to state universities to local volunteer fire companies to county pension funds to legislative endeavors. Their mandate is quite broad. Their job is to just make sure that money is being put to good use and monitor reports of waste, fraud, and abuse. I should say too, a lot of the audits they do are statutorily required. I mentioned, for instance, of volunteer fire companies. That's something they have to do. They also school districts. There have to be audits of school districts. Though that is actually a noteworthy thing for the Auditor General actually threw that responsibility back to the Department of Education during his time, or current Auditor General. But I get ahead of myself. The Auditor General's job is basically to just make sure that money is not being abused and do the best they can. They have some responsibilities provided by law, but otherwise they do have a wide ability to pick what they think are important uses of state dollars and make sure those dollars are being used right. So for this office is held by Republican Tim DeFore. I will get to him in a second. And there are two Democrats challenging him. First, we have Malcolm Kenyatta. He is a Philadelphia native. He worked for the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce as a working on their diversity inclusion efforts. He was elected to the Pennsylvania State House in 2018. He became the first openly LGBTQ person of color to serve in the General Assembly. Since then, he has championed voting rights and a lot of progressive policies. He hasn't had a bill become law quite yet. That we have a split General Assembly, and before that, he was in the minority. But that's the way it works. Legislating is difficult sometimes. He has a lot of endorsements in this race. The Pennsylvania Democratic Party endorsed him. Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey has endorsed him. A bunch of members of the state legislature, including House Speaker Joanne McClinton, have endorsed him. And he's also recommended by the PSEA, which is the state's biggest teachers union. So he has a bunch to his name. He has a lot of that support from the institutional party. He's also running in this race is Mark Pinsley. He is a graduate of Northeastern University. He ran for state senate in 2018 unsuccessfully against then state senator Pat Brown, and then won office in Lehigh County, where he's from, as the county controller, which is basically the county equivalent of the auditor general. He, in that time, has audited. He spent some time looking at the diagnosis or misdiagnosis of I believe I know it as Munchausen by proxy. I believe that term might have become outmoded, but the idea of the diagnosis of somebody of a child being of medical abuse by a parent claiming their child is sick when this child isn't sick. He has and so he spends some time on that. And if elected as state auditor, he said he wants to look at, say, for instance, the state's use of how much resources go into its campaign finance system and the lobbying system. He said he wants to take a closer look at those. And he's endorsed by Vote Vets, which is a group that backs veterans. He is himself a veteran, and the Parents Medical Rights Group. Then, as I mentioned, the incumbent is Tim DeFore. DeFore is a Dauphin County native who went to Penn State. He was the county controller of Dauphin County. He himself is also an accountant and had served as an auditor before, but then became the controller of Dauphin County. Like I said, that's the county version of the auditor general. He was elected as the auditor general in 2020, taking the position. It was open at the time. Since then, he spent a lot of time basically trying to bring the office, as he would put it, back to basics. The previous auditor general, who actually is going to feature later in our conversation, spent a good amount of time using the office to focus on issues like gun violence and marijuana legalization. And he has said, he wants to focus more on issues where he thinks he can really track use of taxpayer money. In-depth audits. He, for example, released a report that found that some school districts were increasing property taxes even as they sat on reserves, though that was criticized by some public school advocates as not missing the mark, and also they've asked for similar audits of cyber charters, though I believe the Auditor General is working on something to that effect as well. And DeFore is endorsed by the Pennsylvania Republican Party. He's made basically a lot of his platform trying to just get the Auditor General's office back up and running, getting staff levels higher, getting some more money to upgrade their equipment and technology so that the office can do more audits and look deeper into some of the issues that people want to take a look at. So that is the Auditor General, and I'm going to jump to our questions real quick. Thank you for dealing with my finger, by the way. We're just in a situation here with technology. Like I said, it's not my favorite thing. What financial experience does Kenyatta have, from Kelly B? I think that is something that he doesn't have. If he was here, he might have a different answer for that. From looking at his record, he did work for the Philadelphia Chamber. He's served in the State House, but I don't know if he has direct experiences with finances. So that I can't say. I would not be shocked if we hear more about that, or if I get an email after this event from him telling me what his experiences are. Uh, for Auditor General Karens, after much pushing, Tim DeFore is finally auditing cyber charter schools. Why aren't they audited yearly as public schools are? And now that legislators are pushing hard for vouchers to public schools, will schools be mandated to do yearly audits if that's approved? Helen, that's questions from Helen. Helen, that's a great question. That's kind of what I mentioned, where the Auditor General's office, like, they have a complement, but there's a lot of audits they do because it's required by law. And those are laws written by the General Assembly. The Auditor General does have discretion to look at what they want, but they have to get in those audits while also trying to do everything that they're asked to do, like, whether it's a school district or whether it's something that straight up the General Assembly has like asked for. And that's kind of, I think, one of the tricky things about this office is, it is really good on paper because, I think the position itself has a big bully pulpit. They really have an ability to shine a spotlight, no pun intended, on whatever you want. But, how deep of a dive is that going to be if you're having staff work on that, working on that while also trying to juggle, all the required duties. For instance, Auditor General's office actually doesn't even have a subpoena power, which is a surprising thing to me given the level of things they have to look at. I should say DeFore also did do a report on the governor's Governor Tom Wolf's business waivers. If you remember 2020, the Governor Tom Wolf had actually offered up these basically passes for businesses to stay open if they were life sustaining, and DeFore audited that, and he found that it was that it wasn't uniform, and there are some issues, but he didn't find anything unlawful or illegal happening there. But that is something that he did take a look at. I'm sure we could find a link to that. And then from Adrian, so what DeFore did is he gave that authority back to PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Education. When he did do an audit of school district reserves before that. And I would say also it's that's the difference too. If there's the statutory requirement for auditing schools that might just be a general, how do their books look? But the Auditor General would have the power to still, on top of those audits, go in and say, oh, I want to look specifically at how school districts are spending construction money, or I want to look at, maybe I've heard of a school district that's doing something particularly unlawful. Maybe I'm going to audit them. That's kind of where the Auditor General has that power and that discretion. They can choose what they want to audit, and that's sort of and that the ability to shine that spotlight on issues you think are important is the biggest part of the role. Okay, I hope I'm still talking slow enough. If I'm not, I apologize. But let's see, at 6:30, which is great. I feel like unless anyone has one more question, I'm going to be jumping over to the Attorney General, because we have 7 candidates for Attorney General, 5 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and it is a very important role. So let's get started. The Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer in the state. They are a prosecutor whose job is to represent the public interest, whether that is defending Pennsylvania's laws in court, enforcing consumer protection by going after, a dentist or a car dealership or a nursing home that's ripping people off. They oversee hundreds of employees in the criminal, civil, and public protection branches. They manage statewide grand juries, which are, basically a body of citizens who can investigate issues. One of the most notable we've had recently is this was going back to 2018, so I don't know how recent that is, but the statewide grand jury on Catholic clergy abuse of children. That was a statewide grand jury. Now governor, but previously Attorney General Josh Shapiro oversaw one on fracking as well. The Attorney General also, they appoint the state's consumer advocate, who serve as a counterbalance to utility companies when they go and ask for higher rates to the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. And the public, and then also the Attorney General is also going to be enforcing statewide laws against some when I say street criminals, I'm not saying, they're not a DA, but, you will see the Attorney General get involved in big statewide gun running operations or drug dealing operations, they'll be involved in that. There's really a lot the Attorney General does. Oh, and I forgot, and my apologies. They also sit on the Board of Pardons. That's a 5-member board that this basically hands out clemency to people who apply. They can cut short a sentence or set somebody free from jail if, based on their application. They sit on that board, and that board has to agree unanimously to give clemency or a to set anyone free. So the Attorney General has a very important role there too. It's a big important role, and the Attorney General is often first in line for running for governor and other offices. I mean, I just go back to our current governor, Josh Shapiro. Before this, he was the Attorney General. Hope that gave a good picture. Very important role. So we're going to get started with the Democratic candidates. And first up is Keir Bradford Gray. She is a native of Boston. She was the chief public defender in Montgomery County. In fact, she was appointed by Josh Shapiro to become the chief public defender. And then she became the chief public defender of Philadelphia. She currently is in private practice. But as the chief public defender in Philly, she attempted to try and connect returning citizens with state resources, public resources, to help get them on their feet. And she has said, as Attorney General, she doesn't want to focus on conviction rates, but the reach of her office. She's highlighted healthcare as an issue she cares about. The Attorney General also has some antitrust roles that can end up coming to play in like healthcare with mergers. And she also says she's interested in trying to go after gun manufacturers to get more at the issue of gun crime. When it comes to endorsements, she's had a few members of the Democratic state legislature endorse him from Philadelphia and its collar counties and local officials. Some who come to the top of mind, I saw Art Haywood, a state senator from Montgomery and Philadelphia counties. I believe Gina Curry from Delaware County are among her endorsements. She's also been endorsed by the Working Families Party, a local progressive or a progressive third party that's mostly active in Philadelphia, and Emily's List. That's a national group that backs pro-abortion rights women. So then moving on, I mentioned he was going to come up. Eugene T. Pasquale, he is a Pittsburgher, and he is Pennsylvania's former Auditor General. He served for 2 terms from 2012 to 2020. Before that, he was a state lawmaker, and he has the endorsements of some members of the state legislature, former Congressman Mike Doyle, a few trade unions, and the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers. He has served statewide office before. Now we have Joe Kahn is a third candidate. He is from Philadelphia. He went to Chicago law. He was an assistant district attorney and helped prosecute corruption in the Lehigh Valley, including, I believe, of Allentown's former mayor. He was Bucks County solicitor for 3 years after an unsuccessful run for Philadelphia district attorney when he lost to Larry Krasner. As Bucks County solicitor, he filed lawsuits against social media companies for the public health impact of social media on kids, and he also had to defend Bucks County's election laws against attempts by Republicans to throw out mail-in votes. And he's currently in private practice at Curtin and Hefner. He's been endorsed by some Democratic members of the legislature, such as State Senator Nikhil Saval, county and local officials, and Clean Air Action, which is an environmental group. Then we get to Jared Solomon. He's also a Philadelphian. He went to Villanova Law. He is a veteran. He was a JAG officer, the Judge General Corps, and he still is an active defense attorney and with the Pennsylvania National Guard. He was elected to the General Assembly in 2016, where he's served since in a district that includes Northeast Philadelphia. He has talked about, as a member of the minority, he was actually able to pass a handful of laws, which is no small feat. That included a bill that expanded tax credits for affordable housing. He's now currently chair of the House Emergency Preparedness and Management Committee and Veterans Affairs, I should say. Sorry. He has endorsements from the House Majority Leader Matt Bradford, and the Philadelphia Firefighters and Paramedics Union, UFCW Local 1776, that is a union representing liquor store clerks, and Vote Vets. As Attorney General, he has said he wants to, focus a lot on gun crime and the opioid epidemic. I think that's also topics a lot of the candidates have talked about, but that's coming to mind for Jared. And so he is, and he's also been one of the leading fundraisers in the field. Then, last but not least, is Jack Stolzheimer. He is a graduate of the Temple University of Law. He was an assistant district attorney in Delaware County and an assistant U.S. attorney, where he prosecuted gun crime. He also was appointed by former Governor Ed Rendell as a safe school advocate, worked for the state treasury in unclaimed property. Seeing a lot of circles here. And then he was elected as Delaware County District Attorney in 2019. During that time, he has prosecuted wage theft cases, worker misclassification, which has won him support of trade unions who have endorsed his candidacy. And he also has talked about, as a district attorney, that he spent a good amount of time trying to undo the privatization of a Delaware County prison and lower jail rates. He has also, though, been criticized by some in the criminal justice space, mostly due to a plea deal that he ended up cutting with a police officer who ended up shooting a teen at during a event in Delaware County, where they ended up pleading guilty to lesser charges. But he is, so that's Jack Stolzheimer. So those are the Democratic candidates, 5 of them. There's a lot. That's all right. We have time for questions. I'm going to go to the Republicans. Throw your questions in if you have them. So on to Republicans. This is Dave Sunday. He is a Central Pennsylvanian. He was raised in Cumberland County. He has worked for the York County Office of Aging and Elder Abuse, and he was elected to become the York County District Attorney in 2017 and won re-election in 2021. As a York County District Attorney, he has said that he's spent a lot of time trying to fight gang violence in the city of York, while also trying to balance that with attempts at second chances and criminal justice reform that gives people a second chance through diversion programs and such. He has endorsements of a large number of institutional Republicans within the state. That includes the Pennsylvania Republican Party, the Republican Attorney General's Association, State Senator Kim Ward, U.S. Rep. Lloyd Schmucker, Treasury Stacey Garrity, and the local police union. His campaign finance reports also show this. His donations come from a wide swath of both establishment and somewhat anti-establishment Republicans. Then Craig Williams is his opponent in the primary. From Alabama, he went to Duke University. He is a Marine Corps veteran, and he also he was a federal prosecutor in Colorado as well as Philadelphia, prosecuting gun crime. He was then elected to the Pennsylvania State House in 2020 to represent a suburban Philadelphia district in Chester and Delaware counties. As a Attorney General, as a member of the State House, he passed a bill that lets the Pennsylvania National Guard assist in cybersecurity training for nonprofits and schools and anyone who needs it. It lets them kind of be deployed on duty within the state. That was signed by Governor Tom Wolf in, I believe, 2021. And he also got bills through the Pennsylvania House. One most notable has been one most notable was one trying to give the Attorney General the power to prosecute gun crimes within Philadelphia. This is known as concurrent jurisdiction. That bill that jurisdiction was actually given to the Attorney General's office under a bill in 2019. Governor Josh Shapiro never utilized it due to complaints from DA Larry Krasner and activists that it would be usurping his authority. but Craig Williams tried to make that permanent with a bill. It never advanced out of the state Senate. Williams doesn't have too many endorsements, but he does have the endorsement of a handful of state House Republicans, and that includes the Minority Leader and former House Speaker Brian Cutler. So those are all the candidates. And now I am going to see what questions we have from everybody, and I'm expecting there could be a bunch here. All right. So first, I live in southwestern PA. 5 years ago, as Attorney General, Josh Shapiro negotiated a detente between two healthcare giants. The agreement allowed residents in the area to continue to see doctors who they'd seen for years rather than see those doctors declared out of network. And that agreement will expire 5 years from now. Do AG candidates have any thoughts about pushing or extending that agreement? I'm sorry, person who asked the question. I don't have your name, and that's totally fine. That's hard to say. I am not any of the candidates, alas. I know you know that. But no, it's a very good question. The attorney generals actually have a lot of role in healthcare, particularly because of some of them are organized as nonprofits. Pennsylvania doesn't actually have an antitrust law on its books. Interesting fact, but these mergers, especially if they have nonprofits, there has to be some input from the attorney general. When it comes to this consent decree, that's a good question to ask them. They're actually something I've meant to look into. I don't know if there'll be enough time between the primary, but there have been a few forums focusing on healthcare issues with the attorney generals, whether it's opioids or gun violence or healthcare providing. But that they've been hosted by SEIU Healthcare and some statewide healthcare or advocacy groups. I've meant to take a look at those, and I think that would be a great place to start because there will be a lot there. Who believes the election was fraudulent and/or participated in January 6th? Phyllis. None of these candidates participated in January 6th. Believes the election was fraudulent. I don't. I'm unaware of any public remarks by either Williams or Sunday that they believe the 2020 election was fraudulent. I believe in debates, what both of them have said is, that there might be a lack of trust that 2020 engendered among Republican voters. They have been absent on saying where that lack of trust came from. But I mean, I can definitely say neither of them are January 6th. If anyone has evidence to the contrary, send it to us. And neither Dave Sunday as Attorney General Dave Sunday as District Attorney did not, as far as I know, engage in any actions that doubted the outcome of the 2020 election. And I don't believe Craig Williams was elected in 2020, so I don't believe he signed the letter that many people might know of that went to Congress, asked him to dispute the results. And so I should say there's so much to talk about with these candidates. We have voter guides that will go over some more of these details, might lay out some of this stuff in better detail. So I hope this was a really good. Let's see. Do Republican Attorney General support the PA constitutional inclusion of abortion rights under the Equal Rights Amendment in the Commonwealth's Constitution? From Lily. Both of them were asked this at a televised debate, and both of them said no. Both of them said that they thought this was a role for the General Assembly to decide, and they said they would enforce the law as it was written, but I believe both of them said they did not believe that the PA Constitution as written did uphold abortion rights. That is not to say, once again, that they opposed it, but they didn't believe it was as written it did that. Who is the incumbent Attorney General? Kelly, great question. You're listening closely. We don't have one. It's or I should say, we have an Attorney General. Her name is Michelle Henry. She was a chief deputy to Josh Shapiro, but she has pledged not to run for re-election. So we have an open race, which is why I think we see open primary. Well, open in the sense of multiple candidates vying for office in both parties. So great question. It is Michelle Henry, but she is not running for election. Let's see. It's just funny. As I sit here, I feel like there are way more threads I should have pulled on, but I like to think we're probably in a good place. We did have some questions submitted beforehand. One, as I recall, was on the candidate's remote work policy. We were not able to get an answer on that. My apologies to whoever asked that. But it is, I get why it's a question, I get why that's a question, but I don't have an answer. And I think the other question was about something about cleaning up the AG's office. I will just very briefly say, same thing. I have no unique knowledge of the who is in the Attorney General's office, who was around for Kathleen Kane, if that's the name that rings a bell. She was a former Attorney General, had to resign in 2016 due to violating a grand jury by leaking documents, I believe, related to an investigation. It's a whole mess from last decade, but once again, something I can't say I have unique knowledge of. My apologies. So let's clarify it. Do any of the other candidates claim 2020 election fraud or at January 6th? Once again, none of the Democrats do. Do you mean probably for Auditor General or Attorney General? Or sorry, Treasurer or Auditor General. For Garrity, she has, I believe, question results. She was at that January 5th rally, as I mentioned. I think she's tried to walk that back to an extent. But I believe I even remember hearing her at I believe 2022 rally with President Donald Trump. With some rhetoric. I'd have to double check the exact tape. I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me, but leaning into this idea that the vote counts in Pennsylvania couldn't be trusted or should be doubted or something to that effect. Waiting to get a comment from her spokesperson on that. He was asked about this during a hearing in 2021, and he basically said, I know my election had no irregularities. I can't speak for other elections. I hope that goes over everything. I'm going to go to our last slide and wrap us up, unless any of you manage to just get one more question in. Yasmin gets it to me. Thank you, Yasmin. That's our events manager. She's great. But this is our last slide here. For more information, go to spotlightpa.org, our election page. So the primary election is April 23rd. The last day to register before the general election is October 21st. The last day to request a mail-in ballot is October 29th. And as for the general election is November 5th. Once again, please go to spotlightpa.org/elections for our full election guides. My email is up there, scaruso@spotlightpa.org. Happy to hear from any of y'all lovely people who sat in on a Thursday. Really do appreciate it. Be active citizens. I think that's great. And I need to plug, we have a quiz. Like I said, the Attorney General is the race that I think has the most open questions in terms of candidates because it is an open race. Once again, thank you to Kelly for forcing me to remind y'all of that. But we have a great tool. It's a quiz. They'll just ask you some basic questions to try and find somebody who aligns with your values. Ideally, you can. We hope it helps. It's always hard to decide who to vote for, particularly in these low information-ish races. So we hope that helps. And we have more coverage on campaign finance. We'll have more coverage on that coming up soon as well. And we will, we'll be covering the races. So keep checking back to Spotlight PA for more coverage in the last couple of weeks. Thank you if you're a member, thank you for being a member. If you're not a member, consider donating. But also our stuff is free for a reason. Just thank you for being informed citizens. Thank you for being here on a Thursday night. And, thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you have a great evening.